what this indictment says of just this one officer, leaving the other two officers completely innocent, apparently, right? Officers Cosgrove and Mattingly did nothing wrong, according to this indictment. It means that if you live in the state of Kentucky, if you were ever associated in any way with somebody who was caught in the criminal justice system, even if they are no longer associated with you and no longer live in your home, police have the full right and are fully within the law to bust into your apartment while you're asleep after midnight and start shooting and can kill you as long as they aim. Say it again. As long as they aim their weapon at you or at anyone in the apartment, they are within the law, according to this indictment, according to AG Daniel Cameron. Police then have the full right to kill you because they are investigating an association that doesn't have anything to do with you committing a crime. You haven't done anything. They're not even accusing you of committing a crime. Apparently, I'm not sure they were sure who was in the apartment. They're just saying that apartment is associated with someone who was associated with you. So sorry, if they bust in and they start licking off shots and you get killed, your death is irrelevant to the law in the state of Kentucky. Your death doesn't matter. Your life doesn't matter. This was a Black Lives Don't Matter ruling because they said that her life was irrelevant, that the life of her boyfriend who was in the apartment with her didn't matter, that he attempting to defend her was the crime. The potential crime was him trying to defend his castle. So the castle doctrine is wiped away when police bust into your home. You don't have the right to defend yourself. Don't have the right to survive. You don't have the right to have medical attention applied to you. These officers don't even have to try to save you. They can just shoot you. That is what I heard in this. Now, it didn't surprise me. I will say I have lost the capacity to be surprised. I'm never surprised anymore because here's the problem. The authority who will decide if your life is worth pursuing a case over is the partner of the police. Their partner who works with them to make cases, who works with them every day, who knows them by first name, probably sends them Christmas cards, knows who their kids are, their friend, their partner, the prosecutor will decide if your life matters. And guess what? In 99% of those cases, they will say it doesn't.
Wow. I'm guessing we are here now.
By the way, that last number she said was an actual statistic. It wasn't her just exaggerating to say it's like almost all cases. That's a real statistic. That's the craziest part.
Right. DJ Ekin, we are here now, the DJ Ekin podcast. Welcome you. My normally chipper self, I just can't be today. Brittany's here, of course, Brittany Gonzalez. And as I promised you, and I thought today would be appropriate to bring her back, friend of show, family, confidant, keeper of Ekin in line whenever he gets too far astray, Miss Toni Howard Lowe. How are you, Toni?
I'm good, I guess, as good as you can be in the state of the world. I think we are at the point where we've pretty much cried all the tears we can cry. I mean, to the point of the clip, I mean, I think we're all at the point where we're no longer surprised. I mean, I don't think the system was built to protect us. And so at this point, I don't even know that there is necessarily advocacy for the current system, you know? So, you know, again, I'm doing all right to answer the question, as all right as I could do under, you know, the current state of the world.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack here. And first off, shouts out to Miss Joy-Ann Reid, who's that clip is from CNN that I saw yesterday, and I wanted to start the show with that. There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, it's funny, not funny, haha, but funny that you say, because that's all I've been catching with everybody that seems to have an opinion on this online, is that every Black person, every woman, man, doesn't matter the age, the same phrase they start out with. I'm not surprised. That to me That's the new hashtag because nobody is surprised. Like everybody expected it, and especially when we started to get that they were declaring a state of emergency in Louisville, Kentucky. We all were just kind of like, well, we know what's about to happen here.
Right.
Um, so let's unpack this first of all with what almost everybody knows. This issue concerns Breonna Taylor, 26-year-old EMT, whose house was pretty much invaded with a no-knock warrant in Louisville, Kentucky, after midnight on March 13th, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Right? Her current boyfriend, which is something that I want to get straight to because it seems to be in a lot of the rebuttals about this, a lot of the chaos about this, that people are acting like the current boyfriend is the
Yes.
supposed drug dealer / suspected drug dealer, whatever.
Correct.
He's not. The current boyfriend's name is Kenneth Walker. That's who was in the house with her. Now, the guy that they keep trying to make sure that they associate with her to keep this in the mud and keep her somehow her legacy somehow cloudy, his name is Jamarcus Glover. He is the ex-boyfriend. Now, part of my issue with this, and ladies, feel free to jump in wherever you can, is this, to me, highly resonates like the Trayvon Martin incident did. And the reason I say that is this, and let me put this in perspective. We got all of this going on around Breonna Taylor, right? And then they come out with this legal jargon because now we know we got the indictment, and the indictment is wanton endangerment, which I have never heard until today, which somebody had to dig deep in the legal field to probably be like, we got to come out of this room with something. So wanton endangerment is not even still anything to do with the harming of Breonna Taylor. Her getting shot, her getting killed. It's nothing to do with that. It is simply reckless endangerment of the officers shooting, and bullets could endanger people in other domains, other domiciles, other houses.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yes.
Now,
yes.
the reason I say that this reminds me a lot of Trayvon Martin is because the letter of the law is kind of, to me, what saved I don't even want to say his name, but the guy who Trayvon Martin ultimately got killed by, because this dude followed Trayvon Martin, did everything you could do to instigate this kid wanting to feel like that he had to protect himself. And then I didn't see it, but from everything that I seemed to gather from watching the trial or whatever, when he started losing the fight or the altercation that they got in, then he pulled the gun and he shot Trayvon. So then it became, at that very moment, we're going to forget everything else that I did to get here. But that very moment, the stand your ground law works for me at this very moment. So now we've gotten all this other stuff going, and in the right down to the nitpick of the law, I got you right here. Because now we got Breonna Taylor. We've seen a $12 million wrongful death settlement. We've seen her death be declared as a homicide. But when we get to who's responsible, nobody's responsible. She just ain't here. You know, she just ain't here.
It's like when it comes to the justice part, like that's the part that always fails. There is no justice that comes from this. And that's where I feel like the unrest is coming from, a lot of.
I think a part of it is that, like, I think the thing that we all have to wrap our minds around is that the root of this systemic racism is at the root of this. And it's hard. You know, there are 3 cops, you know, you've seen the sayings, arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor over and over again. But the reality is Breonna Taylor was killed by a negligent system. There are many fails. Before the cops actually shot into Breonna's house and killed her, Breonna's death was already written by a ton of steps that were negligent and flawed in our system, right? When a no-knock warrant was entered or was actually approved initially, right? Because we know now that they then changed it, and now there's some controversy of whether or not they announced themselves. But when the no-knock warrant was originally issued, the system was failing Breonna, right? Especially because they were not sure and the alleged ex-boyfriend was already in police custody, right? Already in custody. So when we think about the AG's job, who, again, we won't even get into how systemically flawed that is, because as many of you know, a lot is coming out around his relationship with Mitch McConnell and subsequently his ties to the GOP. So you have a lot of people that are entangled
Right.
in this scenario, right? So this isn't simply the cops that shot into Breonna's house. The reason that that they're working harder to provide impunity to those cops is because that would mean that a lot of people would be responsible for the murder of Breonna Taylor, right? And so to me, I'm like, I'm not surprised because by saying that they are guilty for what they did, right? And really, to be honest with you, everyone in America should be screaming, it is not okay for you to walk in my house, kill me,
Right.
and then have impunity based on the fact that you did not get it right.
Exactly.
Right? But unfortunately, again, systemic racism. A lot of people know who's ringing. You hear that?
I don't know who
I
that
don't
is.
know
It's
who
not
that
me.
is.
A lot of people know that that's just what it is, you know? So
Who is that ringing?
I don't know.
Watch Brittany be looking around and it be her.
I know. I'm like, no, I swear there's.
It's not me.
It
It
probably
ain't me
is
this
me,
time.
but I don't see nothing. So I don't. So
Well,
I
like,
see.
wait,
Nobody calls me on these things, so I don't know what's.
maybe. Well, maybe it's your actual phone. I don't know. Maybe that's in the room. I don't.
No,
I
it's
don't.
not. It's in the other room.
Okay, I don't even have one of those cute rings, so I would never even get that ring. I got the good old fashioned. I got a good old fashioned thug grandma ring. So that's how I'm going.
My calls are silence. But go ahead. I mean, I think hopefully that answers, the question, right? Which is, you can't really arrest the 3 cops responsible for the shooting when the negligence is so deep rooted.
Right. What's really
This is all cover.
Right. And what strikes me too is that there's so many things, and maybe I watch too many law shows, maybe I've talked to too many officers, and the guy who even originally got the warrant, he's nowhere on the scene. He's nowhere on the scene. And then there's a lot of confusion about whether they identified themselves. And I'm still in it, and it could be just me, but I think I'm a realist when I say 8 out of 10 people, you wake me up when I'm asleep after midnight, just busting in my house or knocking crazy. First of all, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm just trying to shake the cobwebs out and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Then the whole other thing that really strikes me too is now you got a guy who's licensed to carry, and you're trying to make this like it's his fault that Breonna Taylor got shot. Like the boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, is licensed to carry a firearm. He, for all intents and purposes, he's dating Breonna Taylor. She's his family. So he's doing what he's got to do to protect his family. Nobody's identifying himself. Yeah. And I found this out last night. Stephen Romans is Kenneth Walker's lawyer. He was on CNN last night. He was on Anderson Cooper last night. Mm-hmm. He said that all of this stuff that they're saying about that there's one person that heard the cops identify themselves, he's saying that person had to be interviewed 3 times before that person actually said that he heard them identify themselves.
Yeah, but it is inconsistent with his testimony the day of, where he said he did not hear the cops announce themselves. I think the other interesting thing that I thought that his attorney also pointed out is that in the state of Kentucky, when you think about self-defense and how now they're trying to say that the Castle Doctrine doesn't apply, but when you think about self-defense, it doesn't provide cover for a third party. So even if the cops felt that it was a threat, how does that make them give them cover or impunity for the death of Breonna Taylor, right? So I think all of it is an injustice, right? We're watching it and we're learning that the system wasn't built to protect us, right? And I think that's where the lack of surprise comes from, right? Because the law is written but can be twisted to support those that are privileged. Right. And you take the same types of laws and apply them, and we even saw that in Trayvon Martin. I mean, you had Stand Your Ground that worked for Zimmerman, and then I forget her name, in Atlanta, Georgia, I think, or right outside of Atlanta. who used stand your ground, and then that same and no one was injured.
Right.
No one was killed.
Right. And I forget her name, but the story went, and correct me if I'm wrong, she didn't even shoot at him. She shot a warning shot in the air because he had been beating her, and
Exactly.
it was domestic abuse that was documented. So in order for her to tell him, like, look, you're gonna stop this, she shot in the air. Like warning him.
Because her children were there, she stands her ground. There was some other way that they kind of loophole her being guilty. But the point is that the law isn't even consistent, right? And that's the challenge with it all, right? Which is that people feel hopeless, because essentially, and I think even more now is what we're watching is that now people are saying, like, is this empowering more death, right? Is this empowering more sort of a desensitization to Black death, right? Like, no one's even reacting anymore. Like, nope, I woke up today, another Black person was murdered by the police,
right,
or a random citizen.
But and you make a good point there, because it does feel like to me, and I've never heard it put that way until now, that it is empowering death, especially when it comes to a Black person, because you think about it like this, and I tell Brittany this all the time. It seems like when one of us gets killed, right, we have to go through such a process to even start the process. You understand what I'm saying? And by that, I mean, we have to fight, march, whatever, to get them to say, okay, now there's going to be possibly a grand jury investigation to see if we're going to indict them, to see if we're going to prosecute them. And then we get to a part like this where it's like, what is this? This was March, April, May, June, like 194 days or something like that. We're at this, and we come out with nothing. We come out with wanton entanglement. That's what we come out with. Wanton entanglement.
So crazy.
And then Breonna was an EMT, and so when you think about being a public servant, right? And where do we draw the line on Blue Lives Mattering, and where do we draw the line on being a public servant, right? And we see this sort of like criminalization of Breonna and her boyfriend, who in fact had nothing to do with this warrant.
Right.
Not at all. Not even closely related. Not even a piece of that warrant applied to them. And if you read through the comments and you start to see how people are reacting and just misinformed, and part of it is just what has been saturated in the media, right? And to your point, just entangling her ex-boyfriend with the current boyfriend and criminalizing Breonna, but no one's really telling Breonna's story.
Right. And you know what strikes me too is how often the cover up starts to come out. And then they that's what makes it so hard, I think, for me to trust the system, is because there's always these other little things that start coming out. Like all of a sudden the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, was offered a deal that he would get his charges dropped if he just said that Breonna Taylor was involved in his drug activities. You understand what I'm saying? So you start seeing stuff like that. You're like, well, if this is all so above water and so up and up, then why are all these little things going on, you know what I'm saying, like back here? And then there was another guy on CNN last night, and he said that her whole association with him was way back in January, her last really association with him. You understand? And he said when they went through this whole thing, the only thing that they really had was one time they think that he went there and he left the house with the post office package. That's what they had. Nothing on her. They didn't find any money when it ultimately went down. They didn't find any drugs when it ultimately went down. They found nothing in her house. Maybe it might have even been a few pieces of straggled mail that was there that had his name on it, but nothing that tied him to the house and associating with her on a regular basis, or her being involved in anything that he had going on at this point. And so you start looking at that and you go, well, dag. And like you said, she's an EMT. She's in the middle of COVID, fighting to save lives. And a whole other piece of this that they're not talking about is she laid there for like 5 minutes, they say, gasping after they shot her, and they didn't even get her any attention.
No. Yeah. And that her mother arrived on the scene and stood out, well, arrived at the scene, was told that Breonna was taken to a hospital. But in fact, Breonna was inside the house already dead. Her mother leaves, goes to the hospital, stays there for hours. Finally, someone says, we don't have a Breonna Taylor here. Goes back to the scene, is told she needs to stay there. Meanwhile, they know Breonna is deceased. They sent a detective on site to start asking the mother, was Breonna involved in drugs? Was her husband? Never once telling her, and her mom's like, I don't understand what's going on. Where is Breonna? Why are you asking me? Of course she's not involved with drugs. Her mom is frantic. They're telling her, oh, well, we believe that she's at a hospital. Maybe you went to the wrong hospital. Her mother stands there literally at this point, it's like 10, 12 hours. Her mother has been waiting. They bring the coroner in and literally quietly remove Breonna's body from the apartment. The entire time, her mother and family are outside asking about her. So the level of collusion, right? Like the level of deceit in this case it's just, I have no words, right? Yeah. And we've seen this happen time and time again, but I think I'm just baffled by the fact that we have criminalized Breonna in a way that makes it seem like she's responsible for her death. Right. We failed Breonna, and not just the 3 cops who shot in after a shot allegedly came out, but we failed Breonna the moment a no-knock warrant was signed without having the right context. And on top of this, the way I'm still trying to wrap my mind around a no-knock warrant at midnight for a criminal, like an adjacent behavior to someone else, right? And we're talking about, at best, a minor drug offense.
Right.
That's right. It wasn't like it was a big bust or anything. It was very small. That's right. And then to do all of that for what? It's almost like they were bored and had nothing else to do. So they were like, let's go, do this big, like they wanted to do a movie or something, like it seems so crazy that it's so over the top that it's like, it didn't match what they did. And again, when you have anyone entering your home, bursting into your home, you don't know. To me, it's like related when people get pulled over, and it's like when a cop immediately pulls out a gun on a Black person. It's like, how do you expect someone to react who's never been through that situation? Most likely, and then we're just supposed to be calm. Like there's a gun being pulled on you. Like we're not taught how to react. And the same thing, someone's entering your house. If anything, we're taught that we have the right to defend ourselves in our home. So, it doesn't make sense there. The expectation.
Not to mention, you got the cop that was firing blindly through a window that had curtains and blinds on it. Yeah. So he's just shooting. Not to mention that they didn't know who
if
actually.
There are children present.
Right. That's what I was going to get to next. You don't know who's actually in the house. So you don't know if there are children in the house. You don't know. It's like they talk like they had intel, but they had really no intel at all. And if I'm not mistaken, too, this was part of like a 4 or 5 house thing that they were raiding. But all these other places were known trap houses, which are AKA drug houses, right? So everybody on the news that has talked about this is like, we're still all wondering how they wound up with a battering ram at Breonna Taylor's apartment. Even with whatever they say else was going on, how does her apartment get entangled in all of this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For someone, again, you already have in custody.
Right. Yeah. And that piece right there, you already got the guy in custody, so he wasn't there at all.
And that's such an important detail. It's like, where was the communication in your team to know that? So that what was the point of entering this home? If you already have the suspect, that's who you needed. That's who this whole case was about, that you were searching for. So again, that's showing that they don't know what they're doing. Right. They mishandled the situation.
Right, which is what my beginning point was, right? We can't charge 3 officers in the killing of Breonna because the negligence is egregious. on so many levels. So then you have 3 cops who go, wait a minute, I was given orders. I followed the orders I was given, right? So then who then is responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor? So what we see is a $12 million settlement for her family, because, and here's the other thing too, for all the people who, scream around, don't, they don't understand defund the police, and they don't understand, that are screaming Blue Lives Matter. When a $12 million, when there's a $12 million state settlement that happens, the taxpayers pay for that.
Exactly.
So
right.
you can be an advocate for Blue Lives, but ultimately the taxpayers are paying for negligent and, ruthless behavior by the cops, right? So in the end, the taxpayers pay for the lack of proper policing, right? And so it's unfortunate because, Breonna's family received, from what I understand, the largest settlement ever to be given in a police shooting. But what really is $12 million?
Yeah.
Right? In the end, Breonna didn't really get justice.
Right.
And to me, the $12 million, as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, so no one will be charged. And so we have this very minor charge. I think the total maximum amount of years that the officer who was charged for the bullet that went into the white neighbor's apartment is 5 years max, right? We know that likely he'll probably be acquitted, or at best he'll get some very small amount of hours for that, hours meaning service, or years that, will mean nothing really in the end.
Right.
Which one of the officers was the one that wrote the email about, like we did the ethical and the moral thing, like standing by what they did?
I saw the email and I don't remember right now.
I just didn't know
if
it was the one who got.
It was one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was one of them.
I was just curious because I was like, he sent this big email out, which to me was so bold to be like, I'm standing by this. I did the right thing. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
And if he feels that way, how many officers on his team felt that way and feel that way, and no remorse. I think that was one of the things that was said, that there was that he was terminated. The one that got indicted was because he showed lack of compassion for human life. After an examination they had to fire him for showing so much lack of value in human life. That's crazy.
It was Sergeant John Mattingly who wrote the email. He's the one who led the narcotics raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment that night. And because I had read the email too, I had saw that, and actually one of the Vice reporters got a hold of the email somehow, started tweeting out screen grabs. Yeah, and he was, it was a lot of different things, and it was a pretty long email too. Yeah. There's parts of it I was looking for that part where he was just like,
yeah.
But yeah, he wrote the actual email. He says stuff. I'm not here to give you a rah-rah, you got this speech. I'm here to tell you that you signed up to help this community and keep your head up. I'm here to tell you I'm sorry you have to go through this. I'm sorry your families have to go through this. I'm sorry the mayor, Amy Hess, and Chief Conrad failed all of us in epic proportions for their own gain and to cover their he's got that. Those are stars. So I'm guessing as he goes, you do not deserve to be in this position. The position that allows thugs to get in your face and yell, curse, and degrade you, throw bricks, bottles, and urine on you and expect you to do nothing. It goes against everything we were all taught in the academy. The position that if you make a mistake during one of the most stressful times in your career, the department and FBI, who aren't cops and would more stars their pants if they had to hold the line, go after you for civil rights violations. Your civil rights means nothing, but the criminal has total autonomy. I don't know why I'm thinking why I'm reading that word wrong. Autonomy. That's part of it for me. I really can't get to because I'm just to this point now because we talk about this all the time. So now what do we do?
I mean,
and no one may not even have an answer. Honestly, I think I just tend to throw that out there, trying to think of a positive direction to go with all of this.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things, right? You have a lot of conversations around defunding the police. I think it's important for people to understand what defund means. That doesn't mean that you get rid of the police force, but it does mean that we look at the budget. Some budgets for the police force in cities are astronomical compared to like economic reform and different things for the city. So looking at how we are funding the police, I think also reforming the police. A lot of the police do not live in the communities that they serve, which is problematic, right? Because there used to be a time where police knew the people that they were protecting and serving. And while that may not be a one size fits all based on the city size, I do think that there are things that we can do in how we recruit that would help us, essentially better police in our communities. The other thing too is ultimately, I know people keep beating everybody over the head about voting, but the reality is I don't think that many of us understand that there are three branches of the government.
Right.
And that when we vote, we're not just voting for the president. I've had many young people tell me the reason they didn't vote the last time is because they were confused. They didn't think their vote mattered. But the reality is that their vote mattered very much so. And, that's how you get an AG who's in bed with a senator and a senator who's in bed with a president, right? And there are many ways that we can be informed about the ballot, and then that trickles down. That AG might have a relationship with a judge. Like all of these things, when we're watching the news, and we're like, why did, we're watching these cases and we're seeing how a judge may have reacted. These people are on your ballots, right? And so I think that's important to know. I think the third thing is that ultimately our government is going to have to be completely reformed. And I don't have the answer for a government for the people. I don't have the answer for that because I think we're in so deep. And right now we have to focus on November. But what I will say is that particularly for Black and Brown communities, we have to change the power dynamics. And a lot of that starts with economics, and that starts with dollars. And it starts with our own financial freedom. It starts with, how we invest. Black and Brown communities spend nearly $1 trillion in consumer goods. So, we're dripped in Gucci. But
right.
and designer cars and things of that nature. And that's not like a diss or anything to the community, but it's just really more of how do we make our dollars make movement, right? How do we utilize that type, and it's easier said than done, right? Because it's hard to get one community of anybody to do one particular thing. But I think when you look at the majority, you'll see that they are very informed about local and national politics. They're very informed about their rights, even as small as like their HOA in their neighborhood. And they know all the rules, all of the loopholes. And I think it's important for us to just become more informed. But right now it's just a really sad time, I think, in the nation, because it's almost like, I hear people saying it feels like we took steps back, but I don't know that we ever took a step forward. Right. I think it's just what we're realizing is how deeply rooted racism is in the U.S. And it's just really being revealed by the current administration.
Yeah. One of the good points is something you mentioned in there, and I think that we all need to, like you said, especially Black and Brown people, is with this being an election time, right? We're all screaming that we're voting for the president part. But these other levels of government, even down to your
We
local
need a
level of
cheat
government,
sheet.
I
We
think that we
need
that
like
may be a start. But I know for a fact, because I know me even personally, until probably these last 3 years, I would get certain things on my counter, and I didn't look at them as hard, and it'd be like you said, it'd be things about judges or congressmen or a local official and that sort of thing, and it wasn't as much as, oh my God,
Yeah.
Barack is running for president, or oh my God, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, that the
Yeah.
election is
Just
coming
not.
right now.
Yeah, and really being an informed voter means um, taking the time to research. And it's interesting because we'll spend time on like, oh, I want a new house. I'm gonna look and I'm gonna research and I'm gonna find. We want a new car. We're gonna research and find. And then we take voting so cavalier, like like it is like we can just walk in and just vote the down. But I'm a Democrat, so I'm just gonna vote down the
Right.
ballot. And not really understanding. And so one of the things that I try to do is say there are lots of resources. I personally like the League of Women Voters, Brittany, to your point around a cheat sheet. They do an amazing, and everybody is called the League of Women Voters, but everyone can utilize it. But they are synced to Voter 411 and .org, and it allows for you to put in your zip code. It'll automatically pull your specific ballot, and then it will give you a rundown of the candidates and what their positioning is.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. What's it called?
So the League of Women Voters, voter411.org, you enter your zip code, it'll give you your ballot, it'll tell you the positioning for each candidate on your ballot. If there are particular laws that are changing, provisions that are on the ballot, it'll tell you if you vote yes, this is what it means, because sometimes those are difficult.
Yeah, they're tricky worded.
Yeah. And so if you're confused about that, it'll tell you if you vote yes, this is what you're saying. If you vote no, this is what you're saying. And so I think that what we don't understand is that there are lots of sites. I use that one because it's a quick one and it's easy to remember, voter411.org, but there are a lot of other amazing organizations that have created ballot interpretation and do a great job of providing you the positions a lot of times on the ballot. So the positions that you see are the positions that the actual candidate has provided. So they're not making it up or interpreting it for you. So you'll know right off the bat if they're for diversity and inclusion, if they're for police reform, reforming the police or defunding the police. You'll know different things about the candidate based on what the candidate wants you to know. And it'll also link you to the candidate's site so you can ask direct questions. I think it's also important to know that our current president has made it very clear that he already is going to make it difficult for there to be a transfer
right,
no matter
power.
Of power. And he is working really diligently to suppress votes in certain cities. So cities that have high numbers of Black and brown people are seeing a lot of things happen, like, they're not going to allow absentee ballots. They're not going to open as many polling locations. So it's important for us to know, I'm here in Texas. So early voting opens October 13th. Best believe Toni will be in line early because I'm not going to wait until, November to cast my vote and not potentially be able to vote. So I think those are some of the things, Brittany, I think are like the shortcut for like right now. We have to deal with what's in front of us. What's in front of us is November. What comes after that subsequently is all the work that we'll have to continuously do to kind of reform. But in front of us, we got to know who we're voting for. And there are plenty of cheat sheets.
All I'm saying is you should start bringing a pen to this show, Brittany, because that's what I do. Because if Toni comes here, you're gonna learn.
I need to.
I'm about to give Toni her own day on the DJ Ekin podcast.
For real.
Learn some things. But Toni, before we get out of here, can I get this from you, because I'm almost positive, knowing you and having you as a sister of sort, because we are related. The president election right now, right? We've talked about this before, and we had his name is Kewan Goldsmith on, and he goes on Instagram as the golden activist, and he's 19. He's up in Wisconsin where the Jacob Blake incident happened.
Yeah.
And he also worked with the voting, and he's been working with that. And so I had a talk with him and Brittany last week. We were talking about the votes, and how, especially, and I think you can agree to this point, you both can, that when you hear Democrat, Republican, you hear black and brown is mostly supposed to go Democrat. That's what you hear. So you got this election coming up, and I honestly feel like right now, again, and I don't think that everything I say is right. These are just my thoughts. That I'm right now maybe voting for the lesser of two evils. And then I also feel like I'm not so sure if Joe Biden's my guy. So in order to make me sure, he ran and got a black lady. Okay, now did that
a very competent one, I might add.
That part I am not taking away from her. I will. That is not what I'm questioning. That is not, because again, I'm not one of those people that jumping on. Like I think she's very qualified. And I think you said that people do their due diligence. You know what I'm saying? On these people, you will find the qualities that make the person worth voting for or to not vote for. Now, but my question is, did you in any way take that as offensive? That he was like, because I don't think I think at first.
So there, I do want to answer that. I think there are a couple of things. So no, I wasn't offended because for two reasons. One, if you've been following it, you probably haven't noticed the makeup of his campaign team. And ultimately, he has a very young, progressive, diverse campaign team. There was also a recommendation, you guys probably can find it, but there was a written, and I can't remember who did it, but it was like 5 or 6 Black women who came together that are all heavyweights, activists, attorneys, things like that, that said in order for Joe to convince them, he needs to select a Black woman to run alongside him. So there was a lot of pressure for him to do something different. Whether we agree with whether that was the right move or not, we'll see come November. But ultimately, I think Kamala was his select, and I don't think it's a bad select, right? I mean, I think there are many ways that we could have, gone about this, but ultimately, I think she is qualified, more than qualified for the job. They have attacked her career and her background and her personality, much like they did Hillary Clinton. And that's what happens for women. But ultimately, here's the thing. I'm going to say something is going to be unpopular. Y'all probably going to slice this one piece and I'm going to get trolled. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes Black and brown people, we want to pick politicians like we pick hairstylists and pastors. And the reality is, we're not going to find someone who completely aligns to all of our ideals and beliefs, right? And not going to do the things that we want them to do it the way how we would like them to do it, right? And so, because the reality is when you pick a politician, they are a servant for their constituents. And those constituents are not all one color, right? So there are always going to be things that are polarizing, right? The reality is, though, we got 2 options and we got 1 option. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time dissecting whether or not Joe Biden is the right person, or if I agree with everything about Joe Biden's career, everything he's ever said. What I do know is Joe Biden is the only choice.
Okay. And again, let's be clear on this, Toni. The one thing I've always told you, no matter what you say, I know you're gonna give it to me straight with no. And that way, I always know if I ask you, you're gonna give me the realness of it, and for that, you don't never have to apologize when I talk to you. I mean, think about it. I take what Brittany say every week, and she don't apologize. So I mean,
I will never.
I appreciate you both, man, and I know this is another tough time, but I thought that it was a discussion that we had to have, and ultimately, you two ladies are two that I like to have these kind of discussions with, no matter how hard they are. And believe me, it seems to be getting tougher by the week. But you know what? I feel like that's why we're here, so I ain't gonna quit having them. Toni, any last or final thoughts, since you are, the guest of the show, friend of the show, family of the show? I'm gonna go back to the drawing board. I'm gonna have a Toni day, because I think you need to come here once a month.
Yes.
Because know, I think you need to come once a month
all,
because
all the way to November, all the way to November.
Yes.
I think so.
You know, shoot, at least every other week to remind people that we have to vote. I think that's the one takeaway is that we have to vote. We have to make it so undeniably like there is no arguing because the votes will be suppressed. There is prepare ourselves for what is happening right now. One of the reasons why, President Trump has made it very clear this is one of the reasons why he wants to make a Supreme Court justice pick. At this point, he wants it to fare in his favor should he contest turning over his power should he lose. And so this is like a fight for our life. Like our life depends on it. Like, if there is nothing else, justice for Breonna is showing up at the polls like we showed up in 2008. That's justice for Breonna.
I love it. Yes.
And so if that's one thing that I would leave with everyone, that would be justice for Breonna is showing up like we've never shown up before. We're in a fight for our life, literally and figuratively.
I appreciate that as always. Where can they find you? Well, hold on, because Brittany may actually have an extra thought. Because when she couldn't wait. She was like, I can't wait till Toni comes here. I can't wait till Toni comes back.
Taught me so much today, and I just feel like I have so many gems she dropped. I'm still taking them in, so I have nothing to say. I'm listening. Today was a listening day for me.
Don't try to text me later and ask me what that voter site was either.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna DM you after this and send it to you so you have it and you can enter your zip code and then you're gonna literally be like, girl, how come I didn't know about this? It's gonna be awesome. But I'm gonna send it to you directly. You don't have to wait on Ekin for it.
Thank you.
Toni, where can they find you on social media?
At the corporate TEA on all social media channels. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me, follow.
Yeah, and I do. You know what? I want to have you back too. I want to have you back, and I want to create like a segment built of. Because I think seriously, and I don't say this. I'm not saying this to make you feel great. I'm saying this because I mean it. Like you mean so much to me, and the stuff we talk about is always way up here. Even when I'm down here, you pull me right up here to make me think about stuff. But I think like the conversations that you and I have had too about your knowledge of corporate America. I think those are conversations I want to continue to have on the podcast as well, because I think that a lot of the gems that you know about in there, I think people, especially as we walk into 2021 and people are coming out of this pandemic and, and a whole nother point before we get out of here, to hear something like the Wells Fargo CEO say that
the Wells Fargo CEO, we got to talk about that. We got to talk about the fact that, President Trump just issued an executive order around racial stereotyping and training, which is the reverse of what happens in corporate. So all the impacts of that, like I'd love to come back and have a conversation on those two topics, and the state of what's happening in corporate and what it's going to mean if this administration stays in office for us. But yeah, like it's so much to dissect here, and I'm just glad y'all listen. I am not an activist. Sometimes people give me a little bit more credit. I'm not. There's so many amazing voices. One of them is Brittany Packnett. If people don't follow her, she is a young, iconic voice in this movement. There's a list of people, but she's one of my favorites. So follow her. But I am just literally trying to do what I can and control what I can control. And I just want to encourage people to stay strong. So
and get out and vote, right?
Get out and vote.
Brittany, where can they find you? Because I see you still having brunch out here on the regular.
Yes,
with no mask on. What? No,
if I was sitting down, I take my mask. I swear. But brunch with Brittany. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter.
Now, how's TikTok going for you? You scared? Are you nervous?
I haven't been messing with it. I've been trying to get the Beyonce choreography down, so I get back on TikTok, and it's just like, nah, it hasn't happened.
That is a whole lot.
Are we counting down the days the TikTok is banned?
Yes.
Trump trying his best. It was supposed to be gone last Sunday, right? Wasn't it supposed to be gone? He tried.
And the judge held it.
Oh my God.
So we need a TikTok before we can't TikTok no more.
Oh, I am DJ Ekin. I appreciate you rocking with us here at the DJ Ekin podcast. At DJ Ekin across everything. Shouts out to Radio Influence, and new episode drops every Friday at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, Toni, we will have you back soon. We'll discuss how we make it happen. And Brittany, as always, I will see you soon. And hopefully you'll be here and TikTok will still be here, because if TikTok's not here, then
Then
you are so unpleasant to deal with, I swear. I'll see you guys soon, man. The DJ Ekin podcast. Love.